Hello, friends. Psychiari here. Today, I wanted to talk about the Galactic War. No, not a guide on how to do a gambit or siege for the 20th time, but to shed some light on an area of the game I think is severely lacking in depth. While I know these type of videos aren't really unique, as a new video shitting on the devs drops almost every day, as it's currently the best way to farm engagement, I want to make a video that is constructive and talk about my observations that are currently going on with the discourse around the Galactic War, its flaws, and the ideas on how I feel we can improve it. First, let's talk about some of the current issues I feel people have when it comes to major orders or the Galactic War in general. I would also like to preface this, but the Galactic War is a complex mechanic, and you won't be able to just mainly do one-off changes and magically fix everything. The issues we face, I feel, are systemic and creative. So it's gonna take a total rework and multi-layered changes before we see any real progress. When I see my fellow Helldivers talk about the Galactic War, I feel one of the most common complaints revolves around major orders. As of the last 2 months, they have really gotten to the point of being stale, boring, and predictive. I know a quick way many YouTubers from Odo to Commissar Kai think to make major orders more interesting is to tie stratagems to them or vehicles. To me, if the only way to make a major order, which is essentially a story beat, interesting is by giving the player a stratagem, I feel we have failed on multiple levels. Some of the greatest moments, like the Battle of Purpley, Malevelon Creek, and many other cool moments, while with one example given did result in a cape later down the line, the initial hype and awe of the creek had no promise of a reward, but just the buy-in to the universe of Helldivers. And I feel that's what we need again. We need a moment to allow people to get hooked back into the universe. We need major orders to feel more than just us holding the line. That's how you make major orders feel interesting. Just look at the current one. This major order of going on a crusade against the squids as retribution for what they did to Super Earth has that thematic hook to get you motivated to play the game. Not saying we shouldn't have stratagems or even guns be given by major orders, but just that's not the solution you think it will be to solve major orders being stale for quite some time. We need systems in place to make the war more engaging outside of just liberation and defending. Now, I do want to say my core changes I want to add come from a different place than what I see others say, as I feel a lot of people want to make changes to the war so that they can win the war tomorrow, or make the war, quote, winnable, rather than entertaining. The issue isn't Helldivers 2 isn't like Helldivers 1, where we have multiple wars that are on rotation, where we can have a specific outcome depending on our actions. We are in one persistent, ever-evolving war. The only time we will be able to win it is if Joel team wants us to have a story beat like that, or we're moving on to a different game like Helldivers 3, which doesn't mean the war is rigged. That's like saying a D&D campaign is rigged because you can't just instantly go to the final boss of the campaign and kill it. We should first reintroduce the concept of recon campaigns. If no one knows this, I don't blame you, as the Arrowhead classic of introducing a event-specific mechanic and never fully explaining it and then removing it from the game strikes again. The recon campaign, in layman terms, basically made it to where if you dived on a planet that was a recon campaign, you boosted everyone's liberation in the Galactic War by diving on that specific planet. But it had to have the keyword recon campaign. This not only makes it to where more players have agency to pick planets to liberate outside where the major order blob dives to, but also just thematically makes sense, since you can't tell me 57 divers on Wezin are really doing a liberation campaign when it's more like they are just reconning the planet before the wider, aka more players join the planet liberation campaign. Basically having it to where the planet auto flips into a liberation campaign with a Helldiver skull icon on the map to signify to players that this planet is in the process of being liberated. This followed by changes to make planets more easier to be taken by less Helldivers and defenses easier to be won. Now, I know this all sounds antithetical to what I literally just said moments ago, with not introducing changes that would make it easier for us to win, but that's just for us. I think it's important on the flip side for the enemy factions to be way more aggressive. The issue with invasions now is that when they happen, they are over planets that take days, sometimes a week to reconquer. And you can end up being on the same biome for almost a week straight. By making planets easier to defend and having faster invasions, the war becomes more fluid and battle lines more dynamic. Because I personally think we should always have the enemy factions pushing deeper into our territory. It feels weird when an enemy faction is not the focus and they essentially turn off for the rest of the major order. As well as, I think it sparks more enjoyment if we could have special event mechanic return. For example, it would be really cool if periodically in the war, because we haven't taken out a hive world, the Terminids have a massive hive, and these hives can act as great host kind of deals where they have a fleet of bots, squids, or bugs with a health bar who go on massive pushes and try to conquer as much territory as possible before their HP is wiped to zero. I'm not saying that it should be a situation where it's as strong as the great host, but having these kind of pushes from enemy factions even when they aren't the focus makes the war feel more lively. A huge issue, and thankfully the wider community has really started to hammer on this, is the game has no endgame really. An even bigger issue is that the creators and the community think adding a next level of ship modules is the solution. I don't think so. Don't interpret this as I don't want 6 or 7 ship module levels on new sections of the ship, like a vehicle bay or a barracks or siege stratagems, but at some point you can only add so many ship modules as a band-aid fix to no late game progression in the game. We need a place to sink our time and our currencies, so I'm proposing 2 systems that involve the Galactic War and your time invested in it, because unlimited or just upping the player level cap isn't going to do it either. First, I think we should introduce a currency sink I'm calling planetary fortification. This is a mechanic where you can hover over a planet and it will have a menu option, where you and other divers can sink samples, wrecks, and even metals to have fortifications that act as small buffs to a planet's health, and divers who dive on that planet. For example, if on Menkent we as a community decide to donate 1.5 million samples to build a Seaf recruitment facility like we did before, instead of it just being a random icon on the map or lore bit on a companion app, you will now have Seaf present with you on missions outside of megacities. This is a direct impact on gameplay that players can do, and by making the cost high, allows the community to politic on which worlds to turn into fortress worlds. You could also do fun basic stuff like Great Walls or entrenchment lines, where for a high cost of samples just increases the planet's resistance to being taken by the enemy. Because it feels when we made those 3 fortress worlds really didn't mean anything outside of just, hey, take this megacity and instantly win, which is kind of boring. Fortress worlds should feel different and maybe even look different. I think having fortifications that lower the enemy's invasion level would be nice. That because the community invested 250,000 super samples and 500 whatever rare samples, that the planet now has a SAM site network that shoots down dropships. While you won't see that in game maybe, it means that the Jet Brigade invasion that was level 40 is now level 20. These also allow for fun stories where we can have a war world that's constantly being invaded, but due to our investment into that world, it's a solid wall unless something ridiculous is built by the enemy to break through that wall. But we shouldn't just stop at planetary impact on the day-to-day game-to-game level. Imagine if you could build a Seaf listening post where, if built in a strategic location, we can actually see troop movements outside of just sub-factions. Because I'm tired of the DSS orbital blockade never being used properly because we can't see fucking troop movements. These all make more non-major order related and side late game currency dumps more impactful. Not just on the day-to-day gameplay, but the story. Also, side note, I feel like planets should have a little info tab you can click on to see important infrastructure we built there that was lost and is still currently there, lore of important battles we had there, and maybe some just background lore like this planet is known for its maize export and is the breadbasket of the Federation, making planets feel more than just a biome to fight over. If a planet has a story behind it, even if minor, it can motivate players to want to fight there. Just look at Seychelles Beach with just a city named New Alexandria. I love roadmaps, and I really do love the immersion the devs take at when it comes to decisions. But this is actually how we can make major orders or strategic opportunities more interesting, besides just, here's a chemical barrage. Why not have secondary or strategic opportunities where it's the traditional, hey, we saw on the bot front this planet, we've noticed a signal from an unknown origin point on the map. Complete X amount of missions on X45 to discover the communication base. And then instead of gameplay, invest requisitions to fund a SEAF intel op. And if we succeed on that, the official Discord of the devs will drop like a PNG of automaton documents or schematics to a new enemy that's planned to be released later in the month. This satisfies us on the players because we get to know about stuff being planned in the future. This makes major orders or strategic opportunities matter because they have a direct impact on our information we get about the future of the game, and provide a story that's interesting with impact. And they satisfy the immersion rule of Arrowhead, making it where we only know about things we should know about since we aren't part of the cyborg faction. But a big thing in war is intelligence, and I feel like this being part of the war would make an excellent addition to just making things matter a lot more. These are just some ideas when it comes to the Galactic War side mechanics. Having major orders be impactful, new objectives like donating currencies to projects to fund them, such as donating rare samples to fund restoration of cities on Super Earth, allowing us to choose where we want to dive and focus majority of our troops, giving players agency as well as currency sinks for divers. But we still need more. I think for a proper endgame, we're going to need a commendation system. Something similar to triumphs from Destiny 2 or achievements you see in an MMO. It surprises me that even on year 3 of the game, we still don't have any commendation tab on the ship where we can work towards challenges like killing 500,000 bugs for the Slayer of Fascism title, because everything doesn't have to be a cape as a reward. We can earn titles. Sadly, titles really have no meaning in this game as of right now, as they are only accessible from war bonds. But a cool thing in-game, such as these in your ability to represent your time invested in the game, if there was titles where you were part of a defense of a campaign. Due to your investment of time defending that planet, you generated the top 5% liberation of that planet, you earned a title called Warfront Hero, because without divers like you, that liberated planet wouldn't have been ours. These are things players can work towards, goals players can work towards outside of just planetary liberation once they hit that end game level. Plus, I don't know why we can't have commendations dedicated to events. Imagine if we had the title of Defender of Super Earth, Defender of Democracy, or when we eventually go back into the Void with the squids, get a title called Explorer of the Void. We can do more than just capes, is all I'm saying. And they allow for player expression with veterancy, because currently there is no difference you can tell from one level 150 and another 150. Having that individuality of being able to flex your investment is huge in a live service game. And providing goals for players allow for when the inevitable downtimes happen where we are building up to events, players can work towards those goals, which is what commendations would provide. Shit, if you want to make it really grindy, you can have tiers to the commendations where it's a bronze, silver, then gold, and hell, why not have some of them reward super credits? All in all, I want the endgame to be the Galactic War. The GW is a unique gameplay mechanic that other live service games just aren't offering. The ability for players to impact the story and decide their own fate is awesome, but the level of impact we had needs to evolve. Especially since we're in year 3, in the same level of engagement that we've had is something that's only okay since year 1. All right, it's time to evolve, move on. I can go more into these by talking about mini events like SEAF sub-factions that we can fund with Rex to send out as a fleet to attack planets, like how fleets of bots attack us, how clans should be officially in the game as a way for player ecosystem to grow, providing even more endgame with maybe a new capital ship mini DSS that clans get to control. But we need a first step. I feel a lot of these changes are a good first step. Also, CGW really shows you the potential the Galactic War has, and I think really opened up people's minds to what we are really missing out. While the fate of the mod getting cease and desist is high by Sony, I just hope that Arrowhead sees that mod and realizes that's what we want. Also, why are planets just one biome? I feel like low-key it would be really cool if planets had multiple biomes depending where you dived on. You would see a different biome from some planets. So if you dived at the northern hemisphere, it becomes like a biome like Marfark. If you just dived in a random continent that is like tropical, maybe it looks like the Oasis biome. I don't know. But making planets just one biome, some planets multi-biome might do some stuff. I don't know, but hey, maybe that's hard. That's just a random recommendation I wanted to throw at the end. And that's how I would address some of the issues I feel the Helldivers face with the Galactic War. I am in nowhere near an expert, and just because I have the ability to record myself behind a mic doesn't mean I'm any more of an authority on the topic than any of you. So please, drop a comment down below and tell me how you feel about the Galactic War. Like some actual shit outside of it's rigged and nothing happens. Also, I would like to mention, since I think it's perfect to add this here rather than make a whole video about it, since I'm not trying to make a video for a 3-minute retort. About 2 weeks ago, a channel dropped a video essentially saying if I want a feature in the game that's not present in the core of a game, I should just go play a different game if it bothers me. It just feels like saying this is a basic criticism. It's just a tone deaf a little bit. I think it's perfectly okay to complain about some aspects of the game that aren't present like in other games that don't change the core of a game. What I mean by this is, if I said I wish Helldivers, like my friend and many in the community ask for, is an ability to customize our armor with some basic color palettes, I don't think the proper response is to say go play Space Marines, as this really will just alienate players, and it's hostile to otherwise something that isn't antithetical to the game. Now, if I said I wish Helldivers had kill streaks and I could call in a nuke, or I wish Fallout introduced a magic system, these are core aspects of the game that, if introduced into these specific titles, would drastically change the identity of the game. So saying go play COD or go play Skyrim there is more an apt response. Even in the example used in that video with mentioning go play Space Marine if you want customization, imagine if you wanted 4-player lobbies so you could invite that extra friend of yours, and you wished that PvE wasn't just limited to 1 player per class. It would be an empty statement and not really addressing the complaint if you said go play Helldivers too. Besides that, I felt that the frustration in the video, I really agree with it, and I'm happy that more people are saying something about the grifts we see in the gaming ecosystem about farming outrage and the incessant labeling. Gamers hate politics in their games, but are the first to make up tribalistic labels to signify belief. It's exhausting, but remember, if after some time you feel the devs aren't listening and you feel there is no hope, speak with your wallet and time and go play a different game. That's my piece on that. I would love to take some time to say thank you to all my clearance holders, especially my level 3 clearance holders, the Final Boss, Celery, W Uwu, Dat Dude Lou, Lieutenant Mr. Doge, Hobbs, Blake Barker 954, Commander Neon, Zephra Soul, Gray 999, Play Too Much 333, your boy Mikey 1776, Soldier Cinder, Darge Binks, the Old Badger, the Great Meister, and Puro the Latex Queen 5844. If you want to have your name read at the end of my videos, or you want to spam some cool emotes in the comments, think about becoming a channel member. As well as, if you are ready to take your next step in your service to Super Earth, think about joining the 2nd Liberation Battalion. We have challenges with unique rewards, movie and game nights, and most importantly, we actually have fun playing the game with each other. So if any of that interests you, or you just want to get updates when I go live, go to the description to find our Discord. Thank you so much for your time. Please, Helldiver, be safe and don't drown.